Hey guys, tonight we're going to do something very chill. We're not rushing into battles or following cranky royals across muddy fields. Instead, we're going to float through time, tracing the long, sleepy path of inventions, the little things and the big things that slowly, stubbornly shaped civilization into the noisy mass it is today. Now, don't worry, I'm not about to start rattling off bullet points like some high school PowerPoint. This is going to be slow, calm, like watching a very old man try to fix a clock while telling you about the good old days. We're just letting the story drift by. And the best place to start? The wheel. Because, of course, the wheel. Not exactly invented overnight. The wheel is one of those inventions people like to put at the very top of every top 10 things humans ever did list, which is fair because wheels are everywhere. Cars, bikes, grocery carts that never roll properly, even your office chair that squeaks when you lean back too far. But the funny thing is, the wheel didn't just pop into existence one day. Nobody woke up in 4000 BCE, rubbed their eyes, and said, I think I'll invent the wheel before breakfast. It was a long process. The earliest evidence we have for wheels comes from Mesopotamia, the land of rivers, mud, and too many clay tablets. Around 3500 BCE, people there were already shaping clay into little round discs. But these weren't wheels for wagons yet. They were potter's wheels. Yes, the first wheels were for making pottery, which honestly makes sense because if you're living in a hot, dry region, you need pots for storing grain and water more than you need a joyride down the street. Transport wheels came later. The earliest known wheel and axle combination shows up around 3200 BCE. And it wasn't sleek. It wasn't carved by some master craftsman with a delicate touch. It was three heavy planks of wood strapped together, like someone had smashed a barrel lid with a mallet and called it a day. But heavy or not, this new wheel and axle thing started spreading. Wagons appeared. People could haul more stuff, crops, trade goods, possibly the occasional drunk uncle after a festival. Suddenly, distances felt smaller, and societies started knitting themselves together with trade routes. It's easy to forget how big a deal that was. Without the wheel, your choices for moving things were carry it, drag it, or put it on an animal and hope the animal didn't wander off. With the wheel, suddenly you've got leverage, you've got speed, you've got storage, and you've got entire economies rolling forward, literally. Of course, wheels weren't equally useful everywhere. Try using a wooden cart in a rainforest. You'll get about 10 feet before the mud eats it whole. In those places, people stuck with other methods, like sledges or river transport, which is why wheels spread fast in some regions and very slowly in others. But once they caught on, there was no going back. Humanity was hooked on circles. Writing, because talking isn't permanent enough. Now, let's drift sideways from wheels to something maybe even more important, writing. Because if wheels made moving stuff easier, writing made remembering stuff easier. And humans are famously terrible at remembering things without help. Writing also started in Mesopotamia. Of course it did. Those people loved keeping records. Around 3100 BCE, they were scratching little wedge-shaped marks into clay tablets, what we now call cuneiform. And what were they writing down? Epic poetry, dramatic myths? No, mostly shopping lists, grain deliveries, taxes owed, the boring stuff, which is very on brand for humanity. We invented writing not for literature, but for bookkeeping. We owe the entire existence of written history to people who really didn't want anyone skipping out on paying for their barley. Over time, writing systems spread. Egypt had hieroglyphics, which look very cool but take forever to carve. The Chinese developed logograms that evolved into the characters still used today. The Phoenicians came up with an alphabet, which the Greeks borrowed and fiddled with until it turned into the alphabet we're using right now. Writing wasn't just about keeping track of taxes, though. It meant knowledge could survive beyond one lifetime. Laws could be codified, contracts could be enforced, stories could be told across centuries. Without writing, every generation would be like, well, my grandfather said something about farming, but I kind of forgot, so let's just wing it. Instead, we got continuity. And continuity is what builds civilizations. The irony, of course, is that the earliest writings we found are still grocery lists. The grand monument of human achievement is basically founded on ancient receipts, which is strangely poetic. Bronze, humanity's new shiny toy. Okay, let's shuffle forward a little more. Wheels, check. Writing, check. Now let's talk about shiny things, specifically bronze. Bronze is what happens when you mix copper and tin together and get a metal that's stronger than either one alone. Around 3300 BCE, people figured this out, and suddenly the Stone Age was over. Just like that, humanity slid into the Bronze Age. What's funny is that copper and tin aren't always found in the same place, which meant you needed trade to make bronze. You can't just wander into the woods and hope to bump into both. So bronze didn't just give us better weapons and tools. It also forced people to start connecting over long distances. The first real international supply chain, brought to you by metallurgy. With bronze, farming tools got sharper, weapons got deadlier, and ornaments got fancier. Because, let's be honest, humans will always use new technology to make jewelry as soon as possible. But bronze had its limits. It was expensive, it was rare, it made you feel cool if you owned it, but it wasn't accessible to everyone, which is why eventually another metal came along to steal the spotlight. But that's a story for later. For now, just picture some proud Bronze Age warrior polishing his shiny new axe and feeling very superior, while his neighbor is still hacking at wood with flint. Agriculture, the invention that nobody could escape. Now, I know agriculture technically predates wheels and writing, but it deserves a pause here because it's the invention that changed human life more than almost anything else, and it wasn't exactly voluntary. Before agriculture, people lived as hunter-gatherers. They roamed, foraged, hunted, and probably had a lot more free time than we do now. But around 10,000 BCE, in the Fertile Crescent and other parts of the world, humans started domesticating plants: wheat, barley, lentils, later rice in Asia, maize in the Americas. On the surface, sounds great, right? More food security. But it also meant longer hours of back-breaking labor, a less dietary variety, and more disease from living in settled, crowded villages. Anthropologists have actually called agriculture the worst mistake in human history, which feels a little harsh, but when you think about sore backs, cavities, and pandemics, they might have a point. Still, agriculture stuck, because even if life got harder, it supported more people. Villages turned into towns, towns turned into cities, social hierarchies formed. And once you've got a hierarchy, you know what comes next. Kings, taxes, wars, and people endlessly writing things down on clay tablets. So, agriculture. Not glamorous, but unavoidable. The foundation of civilization, and also the reason we can't just spend our lives napping under trees anymore. Let's coast to the end of part 1. So, there we have it. Inventions rolling slowly into place. The wheel making transport easier, writing making memory permanent, bronze making everything shiny and slightly more violent, and agriculture quietly forcing everyone to work harder for less personal freedom. And that's not exactly the stuff of bedtime fairy tales, but in a way it's better, because these inventions weren't flashy breakthroughs. They were gradual, messy, imperfect steps, and yet together they built the scaffolding of everything that came later. And with that, let's let the wheel keep turning. Next time, we'll float into other game changers: iron, printing presses, steam engines, and beyond. But for now, just settle back. Imagine the quiet rhythm of a wheel rolling, a potter's clay spinning, and a scribe scratching neat little symbols into a tablet, making sure nobody forgets how much barley was delivered last Tuesday. Sleepy, ordinary, and somehow world changing.